Our gospel reading for this morning comes from Luke chapter 8, where Jesus shows even his authority over the devil and all demons. Then they sailed to the country of the Gerasenes, which is opposite Galilee. When Jesus had stepped out on land, there met him a man from the city who had demons. For a long time he had worn no clothes, and he had not lived in a house, but among the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell down before him and said with a loud voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me." For he had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. For many a time it had seized him. He was kept under guard and bound with chains and shackles. But he would break the bonds and be driven by the demon into the desert. Jesus then asked him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Legion," for many demons had entered him. And they begged him not to command them to depart into the abyss. Now a large herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside, and they begged him to let them enter these. So he gave them permission. Then the demons came out of the man and entered the pigs, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. When the herdsmen saw what had happened, they fled and told it in the city and in the country. Then people went to see what had happened. And when they came to Jesus and found the man from whom the demons had gone, sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. And those who had seen it told them how the demon-possessed man had been healed. Then all the people of the surrounding country of the Gerasenes asked him to depart from them, for they were seized with great fear. So he got into the boat and returned. The man from whom the demons had gone begged that he might be with him. But Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return to your home and declare how much God has done for you." And he went away, proclaiming throughout the whole city how much Jesus had done for him. This is the gospel of the Lord. Praise the Lord. And I'm talking about the stuff we carry every single day. And when we look at our story for today in the gospel reading, we're going to find the baggage of a man possessed by demons, but we're also going to see the story that they get to tell. This comes from the last verse of our reading, 39. It says, "Return to your home." Jesus said to the man, "Return to your home and declare how much God has done through you." And he went away, proclaiming throughout the whole city how much Jesus had done for him. Please pray with me. May the words of my mouth, the meditation of all our hearts, be ever pleasing and acceptable in your sight, O Lord. Amen. You know, as we look at the experiences of the disciples through Scripture, we see that Jesus has given them plenty of stories to tell. And actually, just before this text, literally just before this passage, Jesus had just calmed a storm because they were just out on the Sea of Galilee, and Jesus led them right into a storm so he could show them that even he had power over nature. Well, now Jesus is going to lead them onto a land no Jew would ever imagine setting foot on. And here's what I mean. So the region of the Gerasenes, this is a Gentile region. So the Sea of Galilee, it's really just a lake. If you ever go there, you can see directly across it. It's not that big. But on the northern half of the Sea of Galilee is pretty much the Jewish side. That's where you have Magdala, you have Capernaum, you have all the cities there in the north where Jesus spent a lot of time. That's where his disciples are all from, the Galileans. There's another region of Galilee. When you go down the lower half of Galilee, that is all Gentile territory. In other words, Romans live there, people from all around the empire who do not worship Yahweh. These are not Jews, and for that reason, Jews, they kind of like to stay with each other. They didn't hang out with Samaritans, they didn't hang out with Gentiles. So no Jew would ever imagine setting foot on this side of the lake. Well, to make matters even more complicated, Jesus leads them in a direction where they would confront a man with a demon. Now, not just one, mind you. That alone is a problem. This man is unclean, so per Jewish law, if for any reason they make contact with a man like this, they have to go through a week of purification. It's pretty obnoxious and inconvenient. And further, Jewish laws, or the law of Moses, doesn't allow you to touch, someone who's deceased, and surely doesn't want you anywhere hanging out in a graveyard where this guy was. And mind you, this is a Gentile pagan graveyard. So this is as bad as it gets. But to make matters even more worse, this guy comes up to Jesus. I don't think this was a story that the disciples wanted to tell out of fear of how their fellow Jews might, accuse them and revile them, and basically we make them have to face punishment and consequences. But it's a pretty fascinating story. The last place you'd ever expect the disciples to go, at least they thought, but here God himself is walking into a land that a Jew never would. And then to make matters even more interesting, notice with these demons, you would think a demon is seeing the Son of God. You would imagine they'd want to run the other way, because clearly they know they're not obedient. They don't follow God. They lead people to go against him. You would think they'd run the other way. Well, no. Instead, they go right up to him. That in itself is unexpected. And then they call him for who he is. They tell the truth. Who are you, Son of the Most High God? Now it's even more fascinating. Jesus, of course, he knows everything that's going to happen. He knows what's going on here. He asked for a name. The name is Legion, for there were many demons that entered him. Now scholars don't really know exactly how many entered him, but here's what we do know. A Roman legion, that's a group of soldiers. Legions at the time of Jesus were considered about 6,000 men. So some scholars are saying, what if maybe roughly 6,000 demons had entered this guy? Thousands, many, too many. I think one is bad enough, but how many this guy had to face? And we get a little context on him. This story is presented in the first three gospel accounts. The book of Mark, his account actually gives us more details. It said that not only was this guy without clothes, he hung out in the tombs. And in fact, he was even bound and shackled, because even the Gentiles knew there was a problem with this guy. And they would keep him under guard. And yet, somehow, every single time, he was able to break his shackles. He was able to get away from the guards. Then he would go run to the tombs, and he didn't treat himself very well. But clearly, it wasn't him doing all of this, it was the possession. This is as bad as it got. Nobody wanted to be with this guy. Well, given how the story plays out, we have this big herd of pigs. We know the story continues with a single word, the word go. Jesus removes every single demon that entered this guy. And they all go into this herd of pigs, run down the Sea of Galilee, and they drown. Now you get two reactions out of this. This is the truth. The first you have the herdsmen of these pigs who are watching this. This is also how you know it's a Gentile territory. They're herding pigs. Jews don't hang out with pigs or touch them. First they see this and they go tell the town. Now the town reacts in fear and they want Jesus to leave. Like that, we don't like what you did. But yet this man has the polar opposite reaction. He had just been freed from all of this terror, all of this torture. He wanted to go with the disciples and be with him, but Jesus doesn't let him go. In fact, he does the opposite. He says, I want you to stay and tell everyone what God has done for you. I want you to tell everyone, just a witness of what happened to you, what you saw here today. And that's exactly what this man did. Essentially, Jesus said, I want you to go be a witness and tell the truth. And then they depart back to the other side. He has quite a story to tell, doesn't he? Now, whenever you look at a story like this, you're really looking at what Jesus calls us to do with, whenever he tells us to spread the gospel. It's as simple as that. It's a witness. It's simply telling what we've experienced, what has happened. We are witnesses to these things, Paul says, or Peter says. We are witnesses to these things. And yet, if you really think about what it is to be a witness, we witness things every day. But it also, as I was processing this text, I had to think about, it's almost like being on a witness stand. Now, I personally have never had the pleasure, or rather the displeasure of, having to testify in a courtroom. So I read a lot of experience. I've read some experiences people who have, and a number of those people will tell you, man, it is terrifying. You go up on a stand, everybody's watching you, and you have to answer all the questions you're given, unless the judge, says no. And you have to answer them as best as you can, remember them, in such an order. Oh, and you're also under oath to tell the truth. So if for whatever reason you lie and they catch you, that puts you in contempt of the court. That can put you in jail. So there's a lot of pressure. And even to top that up, but that's not enough. Even if you're telling the truth, the words you say can determine the fate of somebody else. Hence, being a witness. Now, some of us in here have been on a witness stand before. But what if I told you that any time we tell a story, whether good or bad, any time we relay our experience to someone else, we put ourselves on a witness stand. No, we're not in a formalized courtroom. No, there's not lawyers asking us questions. No, our story may not necessarily affect the fate of somebody else. But to be a witness is simply to recount events. But more specifically, to tell the truth about them. And as you well know, the truth has consequences. Going through our text here, we know the disciples, after watching this, had a story to tell of what God did. But as we said, I imagine, much like the other Gentiles who were told about this, I think the disciples were afraid because they knew they might be reprimanded, they might be accused, they could get in a lot of trouble with people, with their families, because again, you don't hang out in the region of the Gerasenes. Well, I'll tell you, when it comes to being, asked or telling a story, we either tell the truth or we don't tell the truth. We call it a lie. And we know that the only way to defeat a lie is by telling the truth. Well, I think at some level we have all, made either choice. And we all know that oftentimes when we decide to tell a lie about an event, not tell the whole story, it's often out of fear. It's fear out of what the truth might do. Let me give you two stories. So they're both involving me. First time is when I told the truth. The second time is when I told a lie. So first time, this is when I was 6 years old, first grade. I had an amazing teacher, Mrs. Feely. She was fantastic. So I heard, I don't remember where, I don't know what the context was, but I heard a bad word, a curse word. And I decided really loudly in front of the class to repeat it. Why? I don't remember anymore. I really don't. But I remember saying the word, and my teacher stops, turns around. Christopher, what did you say? I was on the witness stand, right? And whatever I said, there were consequences. There was pressure. I told the truth. And this was particularly bad because it was one of our classmates' birthdays, and whenever there's a birthday, there's usually, baked goods that the kid brings or someone brings them in. Well, I had to go to my seat, put my head down. I didn't get any baked goods. It was rough. But you know what? After that, after a few days, I was good with my teacher again. I apologized if we made up. Pretty sure I apologized, but we made up. Everything was fine. It was like it never happened. And I never did it again. That's when I told the truth. Another time, told a lie. Sadly, it was a lot more recent. In fact, it taught me a lesson as to why you should never, ever, ever lie. And I'm totally serious. This was in my last congregation. I helped co-lead a chess club that we had in our church, and I did it with another pastor from another church in our circuit, and I'm good friends with him. And I was going out of town for a conference in St. Louis, and I forgot to make sure he was prepared and set up so that he could lead our chess clubs while I was out. So one of our staff members who oversees stuff reached out to me and said, "By the way, Pastor, I saw, your co-leader, and he wasn't sure what to do. He wasn't sure how chess club was going to run today. Is he prepared for it? Is he set up? And now here's how I reacted. I reacted in fear. Because I thought, oh no, I'm a pastor. I can't mess up. I can't be wrong. They can't find out that I messed up. So what did I do? The wrong thing. I made it look like it was his fault that he didn't, that he still wasn't prepared. What I didn't know is a staff member reached out to me, actually knew everything that happened and saw right through that lie. And I'll tell you what, even though I apologized and sought forgiveness, that relationship was broken. And it was costly. And other people, not everyone did, but other people who found out about it, cost them their trust of me. Because a lie has far greater impact than the truth. You see, the reason we tell lies is out of fear. It's out of fear of the initial consequences that we might face. Because yeah, the truth can hurt sometimes, and sure, it does lead to initial consequences sometimes. So we tell the lie hoping to not have to face the consequences of the truth. We tell it so maybe we can offset it, maybe no one will find out. But of course, if it ever comes out, it's far more costly. And it is for that experience that I dealt with my last church. I said, I will never lie again to my congregants, to anyone, because it's far too costly to telling the truth. All I had to say was, whoops, I forgot. Thank you for catching that. Let me call him and catch him up to speed. That's all I had to do. And it wasn't that big of a deal, right? But fear took over. Because, sometimes the truth is very scary. It really is. And yes, the consequences of lying is horrible. Like I said, I'm not going to do that again because it's not worth it. It's not worth losing trust. And when you look at what's going on here in this story, the truth could be really scary. I imagine the disciples will later tell it. In fact, we know they did because they wrote about it. But what about this man? I look at this guy who was forgiven, who had an incredible story to tell. And Jesus said, go be a witness to it. And he knew that he was going to be walking into a village of pagans. First off, who is Jesus? I mean, we don't believe in him because we already have our own pagan gods. And on top of that, they already heard about Jesus from the herdsmen who lost all their pigs. And they asked Jesus to leave because they were afraid of him. So now this guy is going to go witness to people who are afraid. It might not be received well. Now, I don't think that's completely the truth because I imagine some people received well because we know Jesus pulled people likely from that region. He pulled a lot of Gentile followers. I think it did have an eventual impact on them, a positive one. But I think that's sometimes the reason we fear the truth, because the truth can be costly. I have to look, at our situation here, because even though we didn't experience what Jesus did, or what this man did, even though maybe we've never seen anything like this, I don't know if anybody has. Well, the truth is that same command given to that guy, to this man who was set free from his demons, well, that's the same command given to us. Go and tell everyone what God has done for you. Go tell them what he has been doing in your life, where you have seen him at work. Because like I said, what is it to spread the gospel and show Jesus to the world? It's just that. Be a witness. And it comes through words and it comes through actions. Just tell them. Now, I can think of many reasons why we don't want to tell people, and I can name some of the excuses off because I've used them myself. Number one, I can't use this one anymore, but I need a seminary degree to be able to tell people about Jesus. I need to know all about the Bible, its history and context. I got to learn the original languages because then I'll have more insight. I got to have it memorized. You do not have to have it memorized. Here's the thing. No, that's not what Jesus said. He didn't tell this man, now go read the whole Old Testament, go find a rabbi, learn Hebrew, go and, learn and memorize all the stories, and then go tell them about me. No, that's not what he did. He said, go tell them what you just witnessed, what I've done for you. You see, spreading the gospel is not a lecture on theology. It's not a college university course. No, it's a witness and telling people about it. Here's what he's done for me. Here's where I am seeing him at work. And the only thing that's going to keep us from doing that is fear. It's a fear. But yet, whenever we consider that fear and we face that fear of telling the truth about who God is, well, let me remind you of a few things. Well, one, notice how in this instance, and in every other instance, by the way, when you look at the gospel, Jesus, whenever there's demons, they always come up to Jesus. They don't run from him because they're subject to him. Jesus has authority, not only over the angels, but even the things on earth. And they know it, and they can't flee it. They can't run. They have to do what Jesus says. Jesus already had victory over them. And that victory hasn't changed. No, maybe we haven't faced demon possessions, but boy, we certainly know how to listen to the voice of the devil who tempts us not to do the wrong thing. Well, Jesus even has victory over him too. And in fact, that victory is, outdoes any lie we can tell. It outdoes any of our fear. So when we fall back into fear, we're kind of denying that victory. People need to receive that victory that Jesus has. And it's not just victory over the devil and demons, it's victory over our sin. It's victory over our fears. It's victory over anything that can happen to us in this world. Because we know what that victory is. It is our salvation that has been promised and sealed by Christ himself. Somebody needs that. And what do they need? Your witness. They need your prayers. They need your faithfulness. Okay, they need Jesus. And that'll be shown through your faithfulness. So I'm going to leave you with a few questions. What stories has Jesus given you to tell? What stories has he given you that he has been doing in your life? And sometimes it's hard to see. I get it. Sometimes it's really subtle. Sometimes we have to ask God to show us where he's at work and to open our eyes. I'll tell you about one from Thursday, from our open house. I was talking with one of our childcare families. They're not connected here in our church, but they're telling me about their son. First off, when this kid, when he goes home, he loves singing all the songs he learns in chapel, about Jesus. But not only that, his parents tell me that he keeps talking about Jesus all the time. So much that, whenever they go out, and they were telling us about that big rainstorm that happened, he said, well, apparently Jesus stopped the rain. This is a little kid, and his parents didn't teach him any of this. But the parents said they love it. And they want to know more about that. And it's all because of the witness of their little one. Think about that. What stories has Jesus given you to tell? If you want an easy one, well, how about the fact you woke up today? God did that, by the way, just letting you know. I haven't gone hungry this week at all, by the way. That was God. He provided. But he also showed me how he's been at work in one of our own childcare kids. How is he at work in your life? So one, what story do you have to tell? Number two, where have I seen Jesus at work? And then number three, who in my life right now needs that witness? Who in my life needs to hear that good news of Jesus? Even if they may not want to hear it, who needs it? Because I assure you that the victory Jesus has given you can be theirs too. I assure you that even if it's not immediate, if it's not right away, God plants seeds. And we have this incredible opportunity to pray for them. So go out and tell your story. Let them know who Jesus is and his victory over all things. Amen.